Oh 7 citizens, Black here from Castle Black Gaming, long time no see. Sorry, I've been away out in other game land where I've been playing Lumberjack Simulator while we wait for the IAE ship event, and of course 3.18 sometime after that, hopefully. Anyway, today I wanted to discuss Update 3.18's cargo refactor, factoring in everything we know as of today, which was after CIG's own Dan Griffiths, who is a lead designer over the team working on the cargo refactor, held an hour-long AMA on RSI's very own Spectrum site. Now, if you like what I do here and feel like I deserve it over the other guys who deliver the same content but at 3 times the runtime, then please consider subscribing, liking, and telling me down in the comments how you're feeling about 3.18's cargo refactor after these new developments. And so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get to the topic at hand. So before we discuss the AMA, let's discuss what started this week-long topic, that being last week's episode of Inside Star Citizen. Now, in that episode, we got some cool footage showing off the new trade terminal, as well as some of the most satisfying cargo boxes going everywhere simulations in any game. We learned that cargo, upon a ship's defeat, will be left out in space or fall to the ground of a planet or moon, and the percentage of how much of your cargo you get back will be ruled by RNGesus, where the percentage can go from 0 to 90%, so you should never lose all of your cargo, usually only half, or some of it. To me, this brings up an awesome opportunity to create little RNGesus bobbleheads that we can mount on our dashboards for our ships, giving us something to pray to when we know our ship is about to become space debris. Jokes aside, I'm glad that they decided to make the storage boxes that we will be able to retrieve once a ship is destroyed, those 1 SCU boxes instead of the smaller 1/8 SCU boxes, as this should sort of make it less of a hassle to reclaim cargo. But even still, on those bigger ships like the C2, having to retrieve hundreds of boxes via a tractor beam seems like some very tedious gameplay, not to mention how pissed off would you be if you were 500 cargo boxes in and then suddenly you got a 30k after what, 30 minutes to an hour of loading your ship, which is just a guesstimate from me on how long it would take to reclaim so many cargo boxes. If you come back from a 30k, your stuff could be gone altogether, or it might not, just depends on how nice the server is being with you. It's been hit or miss for me when I've done cargo runs, and usually depends on where I last was with the shipment, whether or not it gets saved or not, so unless there are more redundancies with cargo than has been mentioned, I'm not sure how popular this will be until things get better, but let's learn more before coming up with any final thoughts. Now, other than the satisfying cargo rain footage we saw, we also got a little bit of info about the new trade terminal changes that are coming. Now, we already seen and got some info about this a few months back when they initially showed us these changes. It is looking good and will help, but without any further changes to trade in terms of availability and better pricing, I don't see this as being anything noteworthy that is going to improve trading. The very last item dealing with cargo on last week's Inside Star Citizen was Chad McKinney name dropping Chris Roberts on how he just happened to stop by his desk the other day to discuss how it was a shame that players would have to lose even half of their cargo, and how they would like to implement something where when physicalized damage comes into ships online, or maybe even before that goes live, that when ships break up that there will be a large husk of the ship where the cargo is stored that will keep the cargo contained within that husk instead of spilling out like a Waffle House breakfast after a night out. Now that would be cooler, but might be slower honestly if you're having to maneuver cargo boxes through broken ship debris instead of it just floating out in space, but I guess the cargo being localized in one area instead of scattered might be faster. I guess we'll have to see how this plays out, but that will not be in 3.18, so who knows how that will change, if it even makes it in from now until then. Alright, so on Tuesday, November 8th, Dan Griffiths, who was this guy in the Star Citizen episode, held an answer session where he answered a few questions about the changes coming in 3.18 and even beyond to clarify what was not so clear in the episode. As with most of these episodes, we get glimpses of cool scenes, but sometimes they skimp on details, and I have to say that what we got in the AMA was way more informative than what we got in the episode, which makes me wonder if they might be better off having more of these AMAs planned after some of these episodes, because too often we are given plenty of sizzle but not enough meat. But anyway, let's look over some of the items discussed. When asked about the ships with external pods or saddlebags like the Prospector Mole, Raft, Hull, etc., will they be able to be detached? The answer was that no, they will remain unchanged in 3.18 until vehicle tractor beams, which is currently scheduled for 2023, so nothing new there yet with the exception of the Hull and Mole, which will detach their cargo upon destruction, although no word on how that will work with the Mole since it does not have one SCU storage but large containers. If it's going to detach, perhaps it will break up into separate 1 SCU boxes depending on how much you had. They were not clear on this, just that they would detach, so we'll see. Someone asked about piracy and encouraging boarding actions. Mr. Griffiths, or Gozer, which is his Spectrum handle, gave up the scoop that with 3.18 when ships quote-unquote die, there is a 70% chance it will experience a soft death, which means you and your crew, the interior, and the cargo will remain intact with that cargo still attached to its grid. Now, the other 30% of the time is when the ship will explode and your cargo is spilled out Waffle House style, with the average saved being about 45%, which is that halfway point from that 0 to 90% spoken of earlier. I just really hope I never roll a 0 because losing it all on a roll would suck. Anyway, this was a very good bit of information and something that honestly should have been explained better on ISC, but let's move on. The next question was about the tediousness of placing each and every cargo box inside of the hold, and I have to say that I'm glad this was explained, as I think most of us moaned after the giddiness was over from seeing so many boxes fall into the ground from the video. The thing that first came to my mind after the giddiness was, good lord, there's no way I'm going to want to finesse hundreds of boxes onto my ship. But the mighty Gozer gave us another good bit of news, that being that cargo will snap into position when you're loading it onto your ship. Now, as someone who has dealt with snap points in many games, both playing and working with them in dev kits, I have to say that snap points can be a pain in the tuchus. How will these things snap with so many snap points? Are they set to stack snap on each other? What if you're trying to tractor them to the back wall of your ship and they suddenly snap to a point in the middle or not where you want it to go? Can some of the snap points be blocked out by having things around them? How easy are they to move? These are all things we will have to wait on, but as with most of this AMA, more questions came up from each and every answer. But still though, I'm glad there will be snaps, and so should you. Oh, also, everything snapped into the grid will show up in the commodity kiosk and be sellable. Someone had a question about how we purchase items from a kiosk and how they get snapped onto your ship, and if you can set up where you would like them snapped, and the answer on that was no. They will show up wherever on the ship on the grid, and then once you're outside of the armistice zone, you are able to move them using a tractor beam how you want, because remember, tractor beams do not work within an armistice zone, at least for now. Someone asked if their ship was full and they found some random other loot and added that onto their ship, but not on the grid because it's already full, if the trade terminals will recognize those other 10 boxes. The short and simple answer was yes. The terminal would recognize them and you could sell them from the terminal. Someone asked if we're getting any dynamic pricing changes for 3.18, and the answer was a flat no, because it would create rework, because once physicalized loading and unloading comes in with a future update down the road, they would have to redo that work, so no, trade will still suck for the time being. Someone mentioned that they want the ability to buy the 1 SCU boxes to be able to put loot, and honestly something I have been asking for since my mule review video I did during the summer, because those boxes are what will make that vehicle shine. But anyway, Gozer said that it's something that won't make it into 3.18, but he definitely wants us to be able to do exactly that, and even to be able to sell the items or loot from those storage boxes directly without having to transfer them from the box into local inventories. So that was a nice confirmation and some sympathy from the devs. Someone asked a very good question about pirates trying to sell items that they stole. So basically the way it works is that whoever buys it, those items are attached to their name, and so a pirate will not be able to sell them at a normal kiosk and will need to sell them at a place like Grimhex or at another no questions asked terminal. Someone asked if cargo containers will have a signature that can be scanned by vehicles. The answer is yes, they can be scanned, and there will be AR markers for those that survive the explosions. There are also color tints on the containers to distinguish metals from processed goods, etc. Someone asked if we would get larger than 1 SCU boxes at some point, and the answer was yes. And the reason they are 1 SCU now is because everything is bought and sold as 1 SCU containers, but that's just for now. Someone asked if we were getting any new commodities with 318, and Gozer said that the only one he could think of is the Salvage RMC that comes from hull scraping, which can be sold at commodity kiosks. Someone asked about cargo load times, but again, this is not changing for 318, but coming later with the addition of manual loading and unloading, where you can choose to do it yourself or pay and have it done automatically and then wait for a set time while it's loaded. Someone asked Gozer to touch on the ISC hinted at cargo missions. So after 318, that's after 318, they want to separate commodity trading from cargo hauling. Commodity trading will be high risk, high reward, which will have other costs associated with it, such as paying to have the stuff loaded, and also security escorts you would need to pay for protection. That would be players, not NPCs. However, the cargo hauling would be moving stuff for NPCs from point A to point B, no ties financially, and no pirates to contend with, as there will be no profit in them for it. Those missions will be similar to how they are now tied to reputation, that getting bigger as you progress. And that pretty much concluded the AMA. So for one, I'm glad that there was this AMA because honestly, I was not amped up for the cargo refactor after last week's Inside Star Citizen. That episode kind of made me a little down about it. Now, even with all of the clarification we got today, I'd be lying if I said I was 100% happy with what we're getting. With each new gameplay feature that is introduced, we find ourselves being let down from what we hope will be included to what actually is. You can look at another hot feature coming with 318, which is salvaging, to understand what I mean here. I think many of the features are just overhyped and underdelivered. I think we can all see progress, and the phrase that always comes up is that it's a good place to start or build from. And while I should be used to how CIG's development works, I still feel gutted at times, but I'm glad we're seeing forward progress, even if we might not get our hands on this until after the holidays. I know they've said December, but as November ticks on and Evocati is moving at a snail's pace with super slow progress, I am doubtful it will be live before the holidays, especially with so many who take time to be with their families during that time. But the wish for us all should be that they get it right and deliver something that does not make things worse. So I say take your time. Who knows, maybe with how long it's taken they can sneak some cargo improvements into the final build. You'd think they could anyway. I know that the thought has had to come to many of you, as it has to me, that the longer it takes, the more things they should be able to include with this build, as those teams who are waiting on everything that is going on with persistent entity streaming should be working still and getting more done on their goals, but I'm sure that's not how it works. Anyway, I hope you're all well and ready for some new gameplay. Tell me down below if these changes discussed have made you more excited for cargo or less. And remember to be kind to your fellow gamer, practice up on your tractor beam skills because you're gonna need them, and stay positive, citizens.